Hello, welcome to this
Okay.
video. I've got an incredible guest here today. Hello, Matt. How are you?
Great. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Really looking forward to this. You are the founder member of one of my favorite modern jazz groups, Bad Bad Not Good. And you know I don't like that many of them.
Exactly.
So, can you tell us a little bit about that band and what you did and how you formed it and the influences, all that, and introduce yourself, what you do.
Yeah. Oh God, that's a lot of stuff to talk about at once. Um, yeah, trying to think of like where to start off with
Where
that
to
question.
start? Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess Bad Bad Not Good is a jazz adjacent band. I don't even know if I'd call it a full-on jazz band. But it's like obviously close enough to jazz that we got grouped in as being basically like a pure jazz band by the press and everything. But yeah, it was started by me, Chester Hansen on bass, and Alex Winsky on drums, and then Leland Woody joined on saxophone. I mean, he was around from the beginning, of course, and on so much stuff, but like he officially joined, I'd say, around 2015, 2016. But the band itself formed in 2010, 2011 when we were all at music school. And yeah, and I guess what kind of launched us into any kind of public recognition was we did a video just covering Odd Future songs, which was a pretty big rap group at the time. But although like underground as well, it was kind of like if you know like knew about it, it wasn't the level that Tyler the
Mm.
Creator and those people are at now. And he saw it, and then we did another video with him when he was in Toronto, and that kind of solidified things. And yeah, and then obviously we played a bunch of shows and made some really cool records. And I don't know if this is too succinct of an answer. I'm also a little bit nervous. I feel like I don't really think about this like
Look,
my
if
life has
my
been like a
lot who are
straight line my
watching,
whole life, and this is like a decade ago. So I'm trying to also just get in the zone. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
well, if my lot don't know who Bad Bad Not Good is, they're no good. Go and stop the video now and go and have a look. Go and check this band out. Because
Yeah,
for me, this you were like one of the first of this new wave of bands, which now you've got Thundercat and you've got like Lewis Cole, Noah, all those bands, and they're also moving in towards influencing popular music, and you've got the whole
absolutely. Yeah.
Mars thing with Anderson Paak. And for me, your band was one of the first ever to do that. But also, you had a vibe about you because you was like jazz, but also almost like anti-jazz as well. There was a
Yeah, there was definitely like an anarchist kind of punk
yeah,
thing. That it was a sentiment we all kind of shared, but never really talked about, you know, like, and maybe like as it went on, we kind of thought about it a bit more. But yeah, what's interesting is that Thundercat and Louis Cole and all those people were all around at the same time. But I think the difference with us was that, first of all, we were like pure instrumental, which I think was like a huge, especially even more then, it felt like was more like instrumental music is like film music or something.
yeah, yeah.
Maybe not if you were in like the the jazz world, but it's like certainly to like my parents or anyone else, any normal person, instrumental music was kind of, this is pre-streaming, whatever. It felt more like a niche thing. It wasn't something you got served on a playlist next to a pop song or something. It was like, it felt like you were kind of categorized differently. And yeah, like I guess like the there's like probably so many reasons why it upsets so many people. Like it's funny, I tried to Google the original one of the original interviews we did that like really pissed people off, but it's been taken down. So I don't know if like their PR agent
But
or whatever, because I
we're
don't think
getting.
anyone, so
I'm quite happy once we get to that point. I'm really want to explore this, but I'll tell you how I came across the band.
yeah.
Round about, I'd say 2015, 2016. I realized I was just listening to the same old stuff that I'd listened to all my life, and I thought I've got to listen to something new. And when I worked on the hip hop scene in the UK 10, 15 years before, we had a
Yeah.
guy called Damien Wilkes, and he was our record guy. And he knew everything. If you were listening to like a Q-Tip album, he'd be able to tell every single sample. He had
Yeah.
50,000 vinyl albums in his house. And I hope I'll have to message Damien and say, you got to check this out. And I went to him and said, give me the coolest stuff that's out there. And he gave me a ton of stuff, and I went through it. And I think the Kendrick Lamar To Pimp a Butterfly album had just come out in 2015. That blew me away. Kate Renada blew me away, and your band blew me away. And
Oh,
what I
really?
loved about your band was, and I've been saying this a lot, you guys can really play, but I feel that a lot of bands are having to ram virtuosity down your throat.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's the aesthetic,
And
like,
you seem like a really out there jazz group. You weren't like doing pop songs like Noah, and I love Noah, but you get an 8-bar solo. I mean, it's very jazz influence.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You guys are full on jazz, but it had like an indie feel to it. It had a punky feel to it. It had like a hip hop feel to it. There was a whole bunch of stuff like, and I love all these things, you see. And so I absolutely loved it, you know. But we had a chat the other day, and you were saying you got a lot of pushback from the jazz world. Do you want to tell us a bit what happened with that?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and I hope we're not like breezing through so much of it. Like, I'm sure it's all going to come around, and there's so much to
Well,
talk about.
They should know who you are. I'm saying it. I just want to cut right there. That's what they're all.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if people know who I am, but anyway.
Yeah, they will. They will.
Yeah. Yeah, like really it all started, the original pushback was just even before we did anything publicly, just at school. It was kind of this thing of like, I just feel like all three of our attitudes were just not fully congruent with like making, I guess, like sterile music school jazz and kind of, snaking changes in that way. So it always felt like, and that's fine. I'm not complaining. If you're going to teach anything, there has to be an ideology. Like you have to have a framework to grade it. So I'm not trying to be like, oh, the teacher didn't like me. You know what I mean? But I just think that's where it really started, was like really noticing. It's like, wow. It's like, I feel like all of us were kind of like not really excelling in music school at all, despite the fact I think we're all like, okay, but it's like, yeah, like for instance, like I'm a pretty good sight reader and like pretty good player, but it's like I got relegated to like reading band in like third year, and I was like, what is happening? Like, you know what I mean? Like, this is insanity. Like, I don't know. Anyway, so we just started jamming like songs we liked, because that just felt like it wasn't, maybe I feel like Alex kind of had the original idea to do like, let's do some Gucci Mane stuff or whatever, which is a brilliant idea, and Chester was just like, he loved rap music so much, and I loved rap music so much, and it was really all I listened to. It's like I did listen to some jazz, but so we were just like in a rehearsal room one night, and then we just started rehearsing. Instead of rehearsing pop songs from the 20s, we just thought, let's rehearse pop songs from now, and really songs that we just connected with. And those songs, like, they have a structure. A lot of it's like modal in a lot of ways, right? Because it's like based on loops and stuff. So it's like it just felt really natural to play for us, and we ended up doing it as like this final kind of thesis assignment, and then we failed that, and teacher's comment was like, literally literally, I'm verbatim, there is no musical value in this.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
But
and that's fine.
That band is going to change the shape of jazz. You can't blame the colleges, because the colleges aren't set up to recognize anything new.
That's just how institutions are. I don't blame. And I just want to really clarify for anyone listening to this, like, this is totally, I don't have a single grudge in my heart towards any of these people. It's like, this is the nature of education. It's like, and it would be the same even if you were in a hard science. It's like, how long did it take obviously, like, theory of relativity was actually a faster thing to get accepted, but it's still, that was panned. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to compare us to that, but I'm just saying, even the wildest, most amazing, groundbreaking idea that like is now so fundamental, people in institutions were going, no, this is, what are you doing? So I'm going
to put that on the thumbnail now.
Yeah, that was.
I was like Einstein, and nobody
exactly. Yeah. But so I feel embarrassed for making that. But yeah, once again, this is
I love it.
Just an association. This is not. I'm not claiming anything, but it's like, it really. I just think that's the nature of institutions, is that they're always behind. It's like, so of course you can't get a pat on the back from your teacher, daddy. The good job for doing something new. That's not going to happen. And then of course there's the underlying layer of just resentment, where it's like, when you have anything where people are, entrenched in a way for so long, and then someone comes along who's like half your age, who finds immediate success in kind of breaking a lot of the fundamental rules you believe to be true. I can't imagine how frustrating that would be. I'm over here playing at the Italian restaurant 5 times a night with my amazing virtuosity, but no one cares. And these 18-year-olds are doing something that, is kind of caught on some global level. But anyway, so long story short, that exact thesis assignment, like that piece, we my friend, I had a camera, like a digital camera, and I had always recorded stuff myself. Like when I worked throughout high school, like I just used that mic to buy microphones, So I had a collection of like really terrible. I mean, I love terrible microphones, so it's still.
Yeah, this is all the stuff I love.
Yeah. So it's like, that's just my ethos in general.
It's like an artistic freedom. Once you don't have to worry about that.
Oh yeah, well,
and you're treating the sound, because that's hip hop as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. And it's like we can get into the technical stuff of that, like that philosophy I have later, but it's like it really was just like run and gun. My friend, like, you know, didn't really know how to operate a camera very well, but he did it, and I recorded it, and it was just recorded in a practice room, and that exact thing we put it online, and it somehow it went viral. I don't know how these things happen, you know, and yeah, it really was the starting point to like a crazy thing that, of course, like I still owe a lot currently to where I'm at, even though I'm not like, I don't really play jazz anymore. I do something totally different, but it's like, but yeah, that was the foundation. But anyway, so sorry to, long story short, also answer your question about how it upset people, is that when that video went viral, it's like, you know, and I also don't even think that video was necessarily like the best performance, you know, it's sloppy. Everyone is making mistakes. We're 18, you know, or something like that when we did it. And I think it's literally that kind of tenet of the jazz school ideology that we broke, that we were not that great, which I think upset people the most. Because if we were like Jacob Collier level on it, you know, doing whatever, I had like, you know, crossing my hands while playing a solo or something, then I think people would be like, wow, you know, I think it would have had more acceptance from the jazz institution. But I think that was the ultimate sin, was like, these kids are not that great at playing, and they're getting attention for playing jazz. But I've been playing my instrument for 40 years, you know, I can play giant steps in 9 or whatever. It's like, so it's funny. I almost think the fact that the performance was so sloppy and was so kind of like not amazing was part of the ethos. It's like, no, it's like, you don't have to take this seriously. You can just express yourself, you know?
Yeah, it's and also you can go back through jazz history, and there's players like Chet Baker, you know, that couldn't read music. They weren't necessarily the most technical. Even Miles Davis, and I think Miles was probably a lot more technical than he actually made out. He hid that.
Yeah.
There's no way you can survive in Charlie Parker's band without being able to play at least a beat. You know? But and I think that's the way.
I mean, pardon?
That's the way it should be. I think what you did is you captured the spirit of jazz. You know.
Yeah, and thank you. It feels like a bit that would feel a bit like narcissistic of me to say, but thank you for like.
I'll say it for you. Well, firstly, you swung, but the groove was a hip hop groove, and that's the modern swing. Secondly, you played contemporary pop songs and transformed them into.
Of course, like
you did all that. You expressed yourself on an emotional level with your solos, and didn't just display, because there's very few of the proper jazz players do that. You know,
that's the biggest
created
thing.
Your own sound.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, and I was thinking about this the other day, just like, you know, but to me, and I think like all of us, like, you know, there was like a bit, and we can get into even a little bit of that. I don't want to talk too much about it because it's kind of getting resolved now a bit, but there was like an acrimonious kind of fallout and stuff. But it's like, I'm trying to like, I really want to talk about this entirely positively in my time in the band. So
when they see this video, they see me say, when I say that you had the true spirit of jazz, it might just smooth over a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's starting to get a little more wrapped up behind the scenes. So it's like, I'm really, you know, it's like a lot has happened, and like, I have a lot of love for those guys. So I'm going to try to take, like, I just putting this as a preface for anyone who knows more into it. Like, why is this guy like talking about bad now? It's like, it just feels like this is just almost like a good timing or something. Cause it's like, I just want to give my opinion on jazz. But anyways, what I was going to say is, and sorry if I'm mumbling too much or going on, but is that I think all of us, like me, Chester and Alex and Leland, would probably say that like emotion and like what you feel while you play is like 99% of what makes music. And virtuosity is 1%. Yeah, and maybe, and you know, and maybe if you could put aesthetics, maybe also could be, maybe it's like, you know, 5%. I know I'm getting over 100%, but and virtuosity is like a very small amount. You know, it's like, I would say like the kind of channeling idea of emotionality, and either within yourself or like spiritual or whatever you want to call it, and then the aesthetic choices you make to kind of color that either with your own tone or with, you know, how you record it, etc. And then virtuosity is just, it's just boring, you know. It's like, it's, to me, virtuosity without the first two things is just, it's not music, you know, in my opinion.
Well, my take on it is that,
you know,
the true musicians, and this is basically it, and if you're not this, you're not a true musician. True musicians have a sound in their head and they want to try and get it out.
Yeah.
And it differs from musician to musician. If you're Alan Holdsworth, you have to invent your own technical, or Lenny Breau or somebody like that. You have to invent your own technical method to be able to get that sound out there. But if you're somebody else, you know, Carlos Santana or Jeff Beck or Miles Davis, you know, or BB King or like Thurston Moore from Sonic Youth, whoever it is, your technique is your own business, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. It's just the tool to get all the good stuff out. It's people they've kind of flipped the pyramid on its head, and it's like, no, it's all technique. And then it's kind of, I don't know, I don't feel anything when that stuff happens. So I'm wondering, like, well, it just becomes, it's like, the difference between like whatever graphic design and art or something, or I don't know, maybe that's a bad example, but because that's obviously a whole conversation. It's gonna whatever.
Well,
the point I'm trying to make. You get wrapped up in aesthetics, and playing well is an aesthetic. It's not truth.
Yeah.
It can be truth, and there's amazing people who can play well and they emote, like Coltrane. But even Coltrane made lots of mistakes. I almost feel like you listen to, like, my favorite Coltrane record is I was saying this when we talked last time, is the 61 Village Vanguard tapes and the complete thing. And there's lots of things you could classify as a mistake, but it's like you'd have to be out of your mind to like actually get into that headspace, because it's like it's just pure feeling. It's so emotional. I get goosebumps every time. I've heard that whole thing front to back hundreds of times. And so it's a shame. And I think this is the problem with kind of, maybe if there was, like, I don't want to give too many blanket opinions, but like if there was a problem with like the jazz educational system, it's that it can too easily forget about what the point of music is,
What a statement.
Yeah.
I love it. You're trying to tread so carefully that you keep dropping.
And then I made this like huge thing that is like probably going to upset.
Music college is all right. They just don't know how to teach what music is and what it does. And
yeah. But I mean, sorry, and maybe that's too general. Maybe I really got to specify like what I mean by, but do you understand what I mean when I'm saying that?
Totally.
Like,
don't worry. You can be as controversial as you can on my channel.
I don't necessarily, but I don't want to like upset people maybe I care about who are in these institutions or respect, but it's like, I think, to me, it's just the point of music ultimately is expression.
Yeah, of course it is.
Yeah.
This is it. And you have to study technique. You have to do all these things, but you can't forget about the expression is at the root of it. And for a lot of musicians, once they realize, when you tell, because I am a music teacher, and I've worked in colleges and I've taught people and all that type of stuff, and just to remind them what they're trying to do, is can really help them. So look,
of course, yeah, I think it's so important, and it's like, and once again, it's like I feel almost like, God, that was a pretty big statement, I guess, but I do stand behind it for the most part, but
it does get forgotten, and it's understandable it gets in colleges, because they have to deliver a curriculum, they've got to assess, they've got to have criteria.
It's a trade, you're learning a trade when you're doing it in college. I think kind of the template for the jazz educational system is almost like a trade school. So
but what about the jazz sort of press and the jazz world? How did they respond to you? Did you play like jazz festivals? Were you...
Oh yeah, we and yeah, absolutely. It's like we, initially the very first jazz press was like almost unanimously panning us. It's like, in fact, it's funny. Like I was saying, I was trying to just get back in the headspace because this is so long ago. It's like I really don't reflect on like the early days of Bad. It's like my life has gone a completely different path. It's like, and it's amazing.
I really want to get onto that. That's
part of my story, but it's also like I do so much different stuff now. It's I really don't think about it. So I was trying to recall that feeling, and it's like I was just looking up articles from around that time, and one of them was like this big article that like the first picture was a picture of the Bad Plus, and it said a white jazz trio that actually matters, or something like that. You know what I mean? So it's like that was kind of the general sentiment, was like, okay, like.
Because like the Bill Evans trio never mattered, did it?
Yeah, or whatever. I think it mattered like a modern in a modern context, what do you mean, or whatever. But it's like the general sentiment, like I said, I think the most offensive thing that really upset the jazz, whatever, industrial complex or whatever you call it, was the fact that it's like, we weren't amazing at playing our instruments, and we got a lot better. And it's like, I think in a lot of ways, I would rather listen to how we played our instruments then than a lot of people who were way technically better than us. But I just think it was kind of like, what, you can't do this, like you don't even, I bet you they wouldn't know how to do this or whatever. And that was kind of the general sentiment, was people being incredibly upset. It's funny. It's like we gave an interview in 2011 or 2012 where like, it just felt like I don't know what I was thinking, because I really am not like a kind of harsh person, but I said fuck Robert Glasper, and I think people really latched onto that, and I feel really bad because it's a person, you know. And
Now
it's
there's
like,
the title.
that's like, what did you say?
I said, there's the title.
I know, yeah. Well, please don't put that. Yeah. But it's
No, don't
funny. I
worry,
look
don't
back
worry.
at that and just think it's like, oh God, you know,
I'm
like,
aware that you're too big an artist now with too much. I can't. I've got to treat you with, you know, care.
No, but it's not even about that. It's just I wouldn't want that resurfaced. That, I mean, it's just like I was just a kid. I don't want. I'm not trying to. This sounds like I'm deferring my responsibility, but I was just a young kid. I just was like, what the fuck, this person, fuck that person.
I love it. I think it's brilliant.
Whatever. And it's like now I'm like, oh, these are people with feelings, and it's like I actually, it's funny. I lifted a lot of Robert Glasper solos at the time. It's like I think it was just that idea of like maybe getting like so wrapped up in like everyone hates us, so it's like I want to, like, I'm angry at them too, you know. It's like this is frustrating. It's like we're trying to do
that's
something
that's what you got.
you know?
I mean,
Like,
this, God, it's like jazz used to be like that. It should be scary, it should be dangerous. It's only music, you know. It's like people can take this with a pinch of salt, you know. When I first heard your album, I can remember I was sat in the other room and I had the headphones on, and what I remember thinking was like, God, these guys can jam. This doesn't feel like they've like come up with charts and, you know, this feels
no, there was none of that. Like,
it's like, because I've made hip hop and I know how those records are made, you know, and they're improvising and pushing in terms of improvisation way past that what jazz musicians are. They're coming with all their charts and they've got their heads and they've been rehearsing it for 4 weeks, you know. It was, you know, when I was making hip hop and I had to learn this producer said, he went, get a loop, put it all the way through the track, and then just let the rappers go.
Yeah, and then you just like write it on the spot. That's 99% of the rap sessions I've been a part of, you know.
Yeah, and it was like I realized what I had to do was not create a structure, but just get a groove, and then you're like playing with the samples, and then the rapper goes, "Oh, I like that. That's it. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go." And then they go, and then after you arrange it. And I felt that your band was like that. It was really experimental. That there was a feeling that you're going into the studio. And it's like you didn't care about the way things are mic'd, you didn't care about the way things are mixed.
Oh yeah, well, we did. I think the thing, like, I engineered all those records. Like, I mean, with some people sometimes. Like 3 was engineered with Steven Kosler and like co-produced with Frank Dukes, and then 4 like I engineered the entire thing. So and all the first records also, like, I engineered with my friend Matt McNeil, shout out to Matt McNeil, and like so like it wasn't like because I was also kind of part of the band, like in the musical thing, but then also doing the technical aesthetic thing as well. I feel like there was like a link there. Yeah, it wasn't just like, oh, record it any way you want. It's like, no, there was a real distinct vision of how it should sound.
Yeah,
and,
but the normal rules that you'd have recording a jazz group, we're
totally thrown out the window. Yeah, so it's like, and just to get in the techniques of it, it's like the first couple records were just like, it was really as fast as we can, because it was using like free studio time that my friend had.
Yeah,
you know, and it really was like, you know, it's like we mixed it and we spent all this time mixing it, and especially the second record, BBNG2, it's like people often complain it's like it's so over compressed, but that was done intentionally. I was like, this does not sound angry enough. This is not clipping enough. This is not distorted enough. It's like, you know, almost all the things you would never do on a jazz record, which like it's so often as flat and natural as possible, right? In the modern era, obviously, you know, you listen to Rudy Van Gelder, it's like there's natural tape compression happening. I mean, just the way things were back then. I wanted to capture that incredibly like aggressive sound. And then on 3, it was like, let's use all like old ribbon microphones, but then kind of fuck them up in all these ways. So it has this crazy dark sound on that record, but also still not like really old, you know? And then 4 was a whole other thing. But what I'm trying to say is that, yeah, it's like, like these were like intentional aesthetic choices, you know? And we never wrote charts. Everything was always a mental thing. It seemed insane. Alex came from playing in like, he already had played like hundreds of shows in bands just around the city and stuff. So he was kind of he was so used to that process of just like, you rehearse in this or whatever. And same with Chester. And I kind of was more from like, I guess, experimental avant-garde kind of thing. Like that was the music I was really into.
Well, that for me was where the virtuosity was, you see. And I knew that you guys were mining a completely different thing, because I'd had a background in dance music and hip hop, and it felt like you were drawing that in. And people had done that before, but not in the way that you did it. It had, I mean, it's like, especially in the early days, people would be quite happy to have an 8-bit sample of a drum loop off a record, and it's all
Yeah.
degraded, and they loop that up, and that becomes the sound, doesn't it? They don't go, well, this isn't a proper drum kit sound, we need to, it doesn't matter, then they'll overcompress it.
Yeah, well, the medium's the message, right?
Yeah.
So it's like and that's obviously such a cliche thing, but I think that really applies to the aesthetic of music. It's like if you deliver something and it's really shiny recorded, as flat and as hi-fi as possible, you're giving a totally different vibe than putting a microphone in a room and compressing the shit out of it. And then that's saying, no, that's the documentation, right? Or it's like, and now we live in a postmodern age. It's like there's times I run things through an 8-bit simulator because it's like this needs to evoke that feeling. Or I run things through cassettes or whatever. And there's it can get corny, so you have to be careful. You don't want to rely on some like pastiche of the past, but yeah, absolutely. Like, and these are all, I think, considerations that were starting to happen in jazz, like around 2010. And I think now really people do consider a lot of these things like recording aesthetic and all the rest of it. But, and I'm not trying to say that we started it. I think a lot of other people were having that same idea. But especially as production kind of got smaller and people could make more aesthetic choices, just mixing stuff on their laptop. You didn't have to be on an SSL, And so I think, but if you look at jazz now and you look at, like you said, Thundercat or Noah, or all these people, it's like they're making incredibly aesthetic decisions on these records. They're not like just pure like clean documents.
No, exactly.
So
I had a student called he's called Will Holland, but he got signed under the name Quantic.
Yeah, I think you're telling me about him, right?
Yeah. Incredible music. This would have been in the mid-90s, and he was into punk rock, he was into jazz, and he was into Latin American music. And the big thing that he did was basically he didn't even have like a computer, just had like a sampler in the early days, and he was basically recording real players, like a drum kit, just on one mic, and then he was putting it into the sampler and trying to create the music that there were samples rather than going to record. He created his own samples, and I felt that his aesthetic actually kicked this off, and he got that from that Ill Communication album, the Beastie Boys album, which is like a jazz album. Some of the tracks sound like Bad Good,
or like Paul's Boutique by Beastie Boys, like, is another example of that kind of like them jamming in that way. And we were aware of those records,
and Ill Communication, I just love that album. And I thought, why does not the jazz world, the fusion world, whatever you call it, they have never pointed to those, not the rap tracks, but the instrumental tracks where they're in a studio and he's playing the double bass drums and they're jamming. It's absolutely incredible stuff. And your band seem to have that lineage of pulling in from there. And that's where the virtuosity is, because you managed to package it up in a way where the jazz world had to listen. Do you know the singer Mark Hollis from Talk Talk? It's a British band.
Of course, yeah. Mark Hollis is a huge inspiration. Oh my god!
His solo album.
Of course, yeah, it's incredible.
That's
I've read the book by Phil Brown talking about recording that album because
I took a big risk because what I did is I had another list of your band and I thought, you know what this reminds me of? It's like that Mark Hollis solo album.
Yeah, especially BBNG 3 was the touchstone I was thinking of, like with a lot of those sounds,
Well, that's it. I thought you could be in. I thought you won't even know this guy.
Of course, yeah.
That's incredible.
I love early Talk, but I mean, Laughing Stock, and obviously Spirit of Eden. Those are like, to me, like those are like legendary jazz records.
Yes. That's exactly.
Those should be. I don't know why those aren't part of the conversation, because there was some cool stuff happening in jazz around, between 87 and 91 or whenever those records came out. I think Laughing Stock was 90 and Spirit of Eden was like in the late 80s.
Yeah.
Those are like, whoa, this is like, and then of course the mythology. It's like, how do you go from being, number one selling pop group to doing something like that is unbelievable. I find music fascinating. That I'm English over one side on one continent, you're over there in another continent. Right, there's no reason, and then I listen to the music, and if I peer into it, there's a spirit, and I go, if this reminds me of Mark Hollis, and I thought I'll mention it, but I thought you'll go, oh, I'll check that out. But you're there too. It's incredible thing. Yeah, and like I said, like whatever that was when we were doing that record 3, which I'm 99% sure is the record you're thinking of. That was like the only thing I was listening to. Was Mark Hall, like that kind of whatever early, whatever you'd call it, post rock, but it really is like more of the jazz lineage.
I'm not a super expert. I might have got this wrong, but I believe that he basically put one microphone in the room.
Yeah, no, it's two. He used two M4. I read the book. I read the Phil
Yeah.
Brown book, and it's like it's two M49s, basically, and then he positioned like the proximity. So you know, both stereoization. So
Yeah.
if you're in the field, you know, you're over here, and you're the right field, you're over there. But also gain, right? So it's like quieter instruments need to be closer, and then louder instruments need to be further away. And then no compression, no EQ, just very rough leveling, and it was a pretty like revolutionary way to record something, and I can't imagine how much noise would be. I love M49s. Like if there is an expensive microphone I like, it's that one. And I used M49s all over BBNG3. It's like that was kind of the headspace. Like, it's like let's kind of try to capture that sound. And obviously on Laughing Stock, you know that record, obviously, right?
Yeah.
Like Talk. Yeah, it's like that was the drum sound, like the iconic drum sound from that thing that's been flipped by DJ Shadow and all these people. That was one M49 positioned 40 feet away. So like it's just so cool. Like that kind of revolutionary studio, whatever. It's so that stuff really inspired.
When I was doing the big gigs, I used to have a little mini disc recorder with a stereo mic, and I'd be in some like 20,000 seater, set the drums up on the sound check. I'd put the mic halfway across this stadium. I'd go and play some grooves down. I'd record it, I'd take it home, and I'd sample it and create loops. And I used to think, God, people think this is a bad drum sound, but if you wanted to pay for that drum sound, you got to get a stadium.
It cost $1 million.
But, it's this, and I find that bit fascinating that these hip hop recording techniques, that you could do things like that. You can bring in a certain sound. And I've heard bands saying, we're going back into the studio, so the drum sound's got to be recreated. We've got to get, that's like a normal band. We've got to get all the mics
exactly,
right place so we can match the second half of this song. And I go, well, just change the drum sound. Just have the drum sound change. See what. I
do definitely think that's like the revolutionary contribution that hip hop and also obviously early dance music, like all that music that was made using samplers. Like now I feel like most people who are into production think along those terms, where it's like there are far less rules. It's like when I remember like when Bad started, like whatever 12 years ago, I do feel like it was on the cusp of like, if you're going to record a record, you got to really go to a real studio. You got these Pro Tools, it's got to hit the Class A preamps and all the rest of it. And that stuff has a sound for sure. And obviously we did that on some stuff, but I think people are realizing that now that stuff doesn't sound better. It just sounds.
Sounds 80s. To me, it always sounds 80s.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's when this stuff was perfected, right? It's like there really hasn't been some revolution in recording like just pure electricity from a microphone diaphragm since like the 90s, let's say. And maybe there's new mics, but it's like half the new mics are based on mics from the 60s. That's what everyone wants. They want that FET capsule or whatever, or the FET transformer U47 remake or whatever. I guess that was actually like a 70s 80s microphone. But anyways, the thing is that it's changed so much now, where it's like it really is almost like you really have to want that sound to go to a studio for it. And most people don't like that sound, I have to say. Like if you go on Spotify, the band Duster?
Yeah. I know them.
Yeah. Like, and no one knew about Duster, and they were from like the 90s, early 2000s. And now they have like whatever millions of monthly listeners, and all their shit's recorded on cassette tapes. Terribly, but it sounds amazing. Like, I think people do really appreciate, like, that's what I appreciate about your channel is this kind of authentic aesthetic that you just have naturally. You're just there in your room, and it's like almost lo-fi in a way, right?
Because properly lo-fi.
You don't have a studio, you don't have whatever, like $5 million of paneling around you and some studio light setup. And I think that's what's so good about it, is that part
of the thing that interests me is that once you realize that I'm just got a camera set up and I've got this sort of lo-fi camera, within that bizarre things can happen.
Absolutely.
It actually frees you. And it's the same thing with that production method. Once you realize that, it's like Quantic, and you look at the success he had, but he used to go, Andy, can we set your drums up in a car park? I want to record your drums in a car park. Well, digital technology enables you to do that. It's easy. It's easy to do that. And yet people have they don't want to go down that route. It's happening in commercial music now. We're coming up to the end of this slot, and I as I've been talking and trying to organize it in my mind, I thought, if this is the sort of jazz interview, and we've chatted about, you know, bad not good and all the whole thing and all that bit, talked about the sort of production things you pioneered. I think if we shut this one down, and we'll do a second one where we'll talk about your current career and that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's not like, and I'm cool with that. Like, yeah, I like I was saying almost when we talked before, it's like, I don't want to give too many anecdotes about like working with this person or whatever, because I think that can be corny. But I'm down just to talk about like where what'd you say?
I love those.
Yeah. But yeah, like just me personally, you know what I mean? It's like, I don't know, but I'm down to definitely talk about it. And like, and also like, I don't know if you checked out any like my solo music on
Yeah,
YouTube.
I have. I've been listening to your
Oh,
most
cool,
recent
amazing.
album.
Yeah, because I'd love to talk about that too, you know, because I have the production thing, but I also still very much like do my own music and seven. It
To
has
me,
not
that
like
you've
pretty
created
like,
a sound, and the commercial
yeah.
world want that sound. It's obvious, because I've gone and checked out the productions you've done with various pop artists, because you know I never listen to pop music. So, but I went and checked it out. I went, oh, yeah, he's not compromised. It's not like he then got suddenly pulled in to just make a pop
Yeah,
record.
and that was really like, and I guess we could talk about that. I don't know if you want to like, or if we should just like let this roll and then it just like cuts.
Yeah, so this will be the end of part one, and I'm putting them out on. I'm going to maximize your fame by putting it out on 2 nights. You see, I'm going to have
crazy,
this one on
wow,
one,
amazing.
I'm going to have the next one, I'm going to try and really milk you. I'm going to milk you for your celebrity.
Okay, crazy.
You all right with that?
Yeah, whatever you want. I'm glad to help out your channel. I love your channel so much. Honestly, it's like,
oh, you're so
this
kind.
brings even a little bit of my audience to you. That's so cool. Like,
I just cannot believe that my love of this old music, me being like 55, after all 55 years old, I've spent a whole time doing music. I've had some successes and not. And now at this point, to be reaching out to people like you, and because when they come to my channel, they're like instant friends, because you're connected already. I think, you know,
absolutely. Well, I mean, what we're doing here is just a 2-dimensional version of your channel. It's like where it's like on your channel, I'm just watching you. You know what I mean? So it's just like voyeuristic or something. But it's like I'm seeing exactly how you are on your channel. It's just your computer might like. Does that make sense?
I just, you know what it's like with musicians. You know, you get in the car, you go into a gig, and what you start chatting about, and there's a whole bunch of stuff. Some of it's serious, some of it's funny, you know, and you just sit and talk. And when I do the interviews, I want to capture that. I'm not worried about where it goes. I just want to capture 2 musicians talking, because it's amazing how music brings people together. And that Mark Hollis thing just blew me away, because
that's crazy.
I reached it. I thought, what did this remind me of? And I thought, damn, he's never going to listen to that.
Yeah, album. drop all the. I love. It sounds so corny. I love music, you know. But it's
this is it. Nobody realizes it.
I think I'll probably know most of the things you throw at me. I'm probably less inclined to know more modern jazz stuff than stuff like Talk and all these legendary kind of whatever more obscure touchstones from the past. Like that's my bad.
Well, we're down to the 1 minute. We'll sit there. So say bye for now. End of part 1, and I will see you on part 2, which will be out in a couple of days. Although we're about to do it now, it's weird how time works on the internet.
Yeah, exactly.